Hello. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 47 of Hxro Labs Live, and I am in the studio today, joined by CryptoMessiah, the other half of the Hxro Labs team. Finally got you in the studio and in U.S. election fashion. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How's it going?
Not bad. It's a bit of a slog fest these days and weeks in the market. The dopamine is few and far between, as I'm sure you've recognized, across the shitcoin market. And now we've got this election that's got everyone paused, waiting, watching, fearful.
There's a lot of uncertainty in the markets right now. And, looking at everything, it is super boring. Mainly chop. You don't really see any altcoins popping off, except for kind of anomalies in the market. And it's difficult because, right now you could even look at setups that, in a bull market would definitely be something I'd be interested in entering. And you've got like, bullish divergences forming and things that are trying to bounce a little bit off of support. But the issue is, we saw that kind of nuke, I guess you could call it, on Bitcoin, Ethereum last night. And I had some really good looking setups that, just ruined as a proxy to that.
Yeah.
It's not like they lost value versus Ethereum, but, if Ethereum is going to decide to tank, 5%, then they're going to go with it.
Yeah, it's that kind of market. It's shaky. There's a lot of alts, like you say, trying to bottom, little anomalies, little pops, possibly some accumulation, right? We're seeing some volume come in on those pops. It might just be some big plays that are, we're going to buy now, we're going to buy next month, we're going to buy next month, and eventually they'll have huge bags. And that'll start us off on another cycle. But like you said, right now, it's just murky waters out there. It's dangerous. And so I've been in sort of capital preservation mode. I definitely slipped a couple times in sitting here. I always talk about my Bitcoin dominance chart, and I say, until we're at this level, I'm just not touching shit. But then I see a setup come in, and I'm like, oh, fuck, trader's got to trade. And I take a look at it, and I've been stopped out on like 85% of those.
And I know you trade probably more setups than I do. And of course, in a bear market, TA is king over a fundamental analysis. But, I can't help but think to myself, I'm looking at a lot of these altcoins and of course, they can continue downwards. But especially in a lot of these blue chip DeFi coins, when you're looking at things like YFI, MTA that have just been dumping and dumping and dumping, Curve even, there has to be limited downside just in terms of risk reward. And I don't really see people coming in and taking new positions to the short side at this point. Even if there's additional downside, it's difficult to justify entering a short here. Like when things are so iffy, things are trying to bounce. And I think right now, it's a degenerate entry. And right now you could be buying like what could be, intergalactic generational bottom, and we could see some great bounces here. But at the same time, like, so much of this is up in the air, and it's going to be decided by what Bitcoin actually does. I personally think that if we see Bitcoin, say that, hey, this is a great rally, we're going to cool off and we're going to kind of establish that we're pegged between 14,000 and 13,000 for a bit, we're going to see some bounces.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. I am not Omega long on Bitcoin as many people are or claim to be. So, I don't care if it goes to 16 or 20 tomorrow or the next day. I'm actually, I'm kind of more like you. I like altcoins. I like those multi-X's that you can get in a week. And I'm with you on that. I see a lot of bearish divergence stuff, some resistance, obviously weekly, monthly resistance, all piling up on Bitcoin. And I think there's a very decent chance that we will range here for a bit. But, just be my bias because I'm not Omega long on it.
Well, then again, like you've got to understand and look at Bitcoin, and every market cycle has taken longer than the previous market cycle to play out, and you have to think about kind of where we are in this Bitcoin market cycle, and I think that we're at the kind of denial phase right now, and we could see this phase persist for a month, 2 months. Who knows? But just when you're looking at it actually, and you look at what was going on in November of 2016, I see a lot of parallels to that right there. And there's so many people that, and of course Bitcoin going up is exciting because at the end of the day we want new retail participants to come in and buy our bags for multiples. That's the goal here, and it doesn't have to happen right now for it to happen. People are always so jumpy. Bitcoin goes up, and I think that's why people are so timid right now, is because if Bitcoin were to level up here, there's a lot of people that say it might go to 17, 18K.
Yeah.
And if that happened, alts are going to take a beating. They just are. So the uncertainty kind of surrounding that, at this level, as opposed to when Bitcoin was at, 10K and we were looking at it to level up, is just huge, because it's a different ball game here. If this is the move, the one that takes us, to 18K, then things are going to be in trouble. But I like you were saying, I'm not quite sure that the move is here yet. Where a lot of resistances, a lot of divergences forming, and I think a lot of people are omega long at what could be a local top.
Yeah, and loading. I mean, if we break out from here, like we did when we hit 14K, I'm sure a lot of people rushed to long that, and it just got rejected. If we, we'll get a chart up here in a little bit, guys. So, shout out if you're piling into the room to see all here. I just think it wouldn't be unreasonable to me at all if we just kind of pull back ranged, or even just move sideways for a week, which, and at this point, and I agree with you, I think it's a bit degen to be shorting alts here, unless you obviously find some like XMR I'm actually watching for a short, because, it's like, everyone's like, oh, Monero, it's privacy coin. It's like coin private. It's going to do well. Probably, but altcoins are getting shit on. And it's, when I get that kind of market, it's very easy to look at what's going down and be like, oh, I'm so bearish on that. That's the one I want to short. But actually just look for the bullish ones. If you're in a macro bearish environment for an asset, find the one that looks bullish. Find the one that, still hasn't come down yet. And that's worked for Neo a month and a half ago. Shorted the shit out of that from the top. It was great. Theta, same kind of thing. Bull rally through the first month of this downtrend. And, it came around and dumped. XMR is actually one I'm watching. So, we might get that. I think we should probably touch on the election a little bit. I know neither of us are really, political analysts by any stretch of the means. I think this is a very contentious election. Even north of the border, everyone up here is talking about it, thinking about it, watching with bated breath.
Oh, people are talking about it around the world, and I feel like you have just as many people that are non-US commenting on, this particular election.
Yeah. And I always find it funny and a little bit cute when, Americans are like, it's our election, you can't have an opinion. And I'm like, well, your leaders are sticking their hands in everyone's politics around the world.
I mean, I was about to say, the U.S. elections do affect the world.
Everybody.
They just do.
And so we may not have a vote, but you better believe, people all around the world have opinions. And of course, and they have real concerns. I mean, actually, I was talking to my friend's kid last night. He's 15. And I mean, he's worried about it. I was like, there's teenagers that are walking around like they're just stressed. They don't know what's going on. It's all crazy. So I think, I think no matter who wins or, leads in the votes initially, there's going to be, some unrest somewhere. And
well, I mean, the only issue right now, and I've heard so many Trump fans say this, and it's no secret that I don't like the guy. But I've heard a lot of Trump fans say that, if Biden wins, the markets are going to tank, which is just, it's not true. I did a stream a couple of weeks ago where, we actually had a table pulled up with the data that showed that the markets actually outperform during Democratic presidencies. And
I caught that one. Yeah.
You have to remember that guess who Wall Street is giving their money to? Joe Biden. Why is Wall Street, who is, they've got the fucking bronze bull up there as a statue. I mean, and it's historic for, they want the number to go up. Why are they giving their money and their endorsement to Joe Biden if Trump is the market president? And when we look at the market's performance under Trump, the market's definitely gone up, but it hasn't gone up in excess of what could be expected from a good Republican presidential term.
Yeah, well, it certainly doesn't fit that narrative that they're, touting, and they're going to use it. Trump is Mr. Stock Market. He has made it clear that he just wants number go up, and that's his main focus. So it's easy to point at the other guy and say, well, that's not his main focus, so market go down. But and shout out to @5KingsFA. I caught some of his FA report this morning on another show, and so I'm just going to give him that shout before I plug his info. But he was talking about big tech, some of the biggest donors for Biden. right? Google, I believe another one he mentioned. So I mean, like, yeah, they're, NASDAQ.
Technology stocks are going to go nuts if
Yeah.
Biden wins.
And so you could extrapolate from that if big tech is big on Biden, then maybe crypto and some of that will enjoy it. I don't really, I'm not watching this to say, oh, I hope this happens so that crypto can do well. I think crypto is going to be just fine. I don't really care who wins that. For me, it's more just about some of the civil unrest and all that stuff. That's the kind of shit that like affects my life, affects friends of mine who live down there. And
I mean, the markets are going to perform regardless. I don't really think it matters. From a market perspective, who wins. I think it just matters that we get this election shit out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and Nick Core here is in the chat. He says oil markets are a big deal though if Biden gets his way. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Biden is pro oil and fracking and all that stuff. He keeps saying he's not going to completely cancel fracking, and that's great. Good for him. But I think it's a myth that moving on into a more green sense is bad for everything too. I mean, there's a ton of jobs out there and a ton of new tech and green tech. And, it's not about like, I don't know. I think it's a little crazy that everyone's just like climate change or no climate change. I mean, I think we should probably just take pretty good care of the planet in general, whether you believe in.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's happening or not. Why wouldn't you transition to, newer and cleaner energy technologies?
Freer. The sun is fairly abundant. Let's tap that ass. I think it just makes sense. And if but if your uncle's an oil driller and he's going to lose his job, I could see why you would have an opinion on that. That's a lot more,
even then, like let's say, Biden does come in and he is anti-fracking, anti-oil, just how much can this guy get done in that sense if you were to just go crazy, especially, considering that if the Senate remains Republican, even if Biden wins, and we have a Democratic House with a Republican Senate, I just can't see that narrative making it too far.
Yeah, you just have a whole bunch more of this back and forth, things not getting passed, and the next election, then blaming him for not doing anything. They shot down all of the stuff he tried to do. So I find politics exhausting. I'm excited for this to be passed, whatever direction it goes. Obviously, I have an angle I'd like it to go, but I don't seek to control it or even talk about it so much that it stresses me out anymore. But it is, it's exciting. I have my popcorn. I'm going to watch.
Yeah, there's going to be massive cope either way. So Twitter's going to be a fun place tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be wild.
Especially if your side wins.
Yeah, well, fuck. I find it fascinating how few people can just agree. Like there's no consensus, even though, the polls are one way, the Trump, we should pull that up. I'll get a screen share here. I want to see
the polls are all forecasting a Biden win, but we saw what happened last year when they were forecasting a Hillary win. I was reading a really good article today that my buddy Ledger Status posted.
I read that. I saw that post.
I thought that article was fantastic. And it just spoke to kind of like the uncertainties that were factored in. The last time in 2016, nobody thought Trump could win. And there was so much uncertainty because at the last minute, a lot of voters that they didn't think were going to vote Trump actually swung Trump. Oh my gosh, look at that hat.
This is our producer, John. Just
Come on.
Today.
Come on.
Not bad. All right. I can't look at you seriously right now.
Volatility.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is interesting. Now I didn't want to cut you off. These hats totally interrupted your line of thought there. I actually have that article right here on the screen. I'll pull it up for us. So this is one Ledger Status posted. He was on the show about a month ago. You guys may remember. And so we can plug this. I'll just put this in the chat for anyone who wants to read it. It's interesting to say the least. I like good analysis. It's hard to find good sound analysis that's not just like, and I want this to happen, I want that to happen. So
I didn't think this article was biased at all. I think he broke down like kind of the uncertainty factors here really well. According to the article, if I remember correctly, there's an extremely small chance of Trump winning the popular vote again. So, even if Trump does win, which is a possibility according to the article, then there's going to be pretty big cope from the Democrats. I'll definitely be coping.
That's going to be insane. I mean, yeah. I mean, who I don't know. I could speculate on it all day. Like the fact that like, just how many, civil unrest that there's been this year. And I don't think it was necessarily targeting Trump. A lot of it was targeting a few other things that happened, and perhaps, I don't know, he exacerbated it in the way he dealt with it around the White House and the gas and all that. But like, yeah, there's going to be some interesting demonstrations, I think, on either side.
If one thing that
so-
maybe they are accounting for this, and I know they briefly talked about this in the article, but you have to consider, in my opinion, like how many people that are conservatives, that are Republicans, that just don't want Trump in the office anymore. And I'm curious how they're actually factoring how many Republicans are going to vote Biden this year, like
or just pass, right?
Yeah, or just pass. I mean, I voted for Biden, and then I voted straight Republican down the rest of the ticket, except for fucking in Alabama, where I am. Tommy Tuberville, who's a football coach, is the Republican candidate for Senate. So I couldn't vote for him, even though I am an Auburn fan. That's not a world that I want to live in.
Fair enough. Yeah. Now, this is a sentence that really spoke to me here. It says, we aren't giving anybody anything when they were told that they're giving Trump a 10% chance. They said, we're not giving them anything. Instead, as former 538 Politics host puts it, what we're doing is mapping uncertainty. And that actually really spoke to me, because I think that's what we do with the markets all the time. That's what TA is, right? I'm not saying Bitcoin's going to go to 20K, but what I am going to do is lay out a whole bunch of TA and analysis and try to suss out some probability that can give us an edge over time. So I really like the article for that reason. I'm obsessed with probabilities and all that stuff. So that's what spoke to me. Now, if you look at the Trump FTX perp, I mean, this thing, I TA'd it the other day, just kind of while we were chatting, Dan and I mean, this thing, like, you've got all these location objectives right here, and it's just been bouncing off them. So if you're loading up the bags here, guys, and you think Trump could win, I definitely wouldn't rule it out. I think if I had to, and I'm not going to trade this because I've just got other strategies to make money in the market than play on American politics. But I like a trade up to on election day. Maybe this thing gets a little rally, because I heard that they count the red states first. The rural ones tend to have less voters, so they get a quicker count. So he could be leading throughout the day, and that is going to lead to a large speculative bid on this perp. And
it'll be huge.
That's like December, so I guess this would be like tomorrow, but it'll be like
this is going to expire, right? I mean, does it just continue to exist and either go to 1 or 0?
1 or 0, yeah. So I think a bid on this to 50 or whatever it ends up being, if he starts leading as the early polls close and the counts come in, and I would just close it, because I mean, who the hell knows how the counts are all going to end up in the electoral vote and all that crap. But yeah, I think there's definitely logic here for an early bid on Trump to at least get above 37. I mean, I think that's even lower than most of the polls are putting up. So, as far as trading goes, there's something there, but how do I measure that? And when does this even close? Is it election day? Is it inauguration day? How does that? I don't know. There's a lot of things. So I'm not too eager to look into this. Mostly I've just been watching Bitcoin. Let's see if I can get my weekly up here. You mentioned Curve. That thing caught a huge bid last week. Was it?
I think it's a short squeeze. Like a massive short squeeze.
Yeah. No kidding. And I mean, it would
fully retrace that. Or what's the time frame? Yeah, it's almost fully retraced that move. But I mean, people, the meme has been, short curve for financial freedom. The economic model is terrible. The inflation's terrible. And to be honest, that looks like new lows are inbound. I mean, that's a pretty significant rejection there.
Yeah, it sets up a chart that I just, a lot of people, they say, well, things are down. They're so cheap. I just want to buy that. And what I would suggest, and I'm not going to say buy Curve, because I agree the inflation model is ridiculous. In fact, I was talking about shorting it like way up here when these lows broke, but there was just no setup for me. It just like nuked, and I was like, wow, where's my risk too? So I just left it. But oops, because that thing was a sick short. But it's this kind of RLZ, this reload zone, that is such a great way to try to grab bottoms. Again, fundamentally, I don't really like this one, but you get the big pop off the bottom, right? That's where the FOMO comes in. Whatever coin it is, everyone's like, oh, it's back. That was the bottom. But no matter what, almost fail none, you will get a retrace into this kind of zone. And that is your area to long, and then you have your risk nice and tight. In this case, the 88.6. I mean, really, like your RR is sick here. So as a model for a setup, like even living within this range, you're still getting like a 3-to-1.
Right. Fundamentals aside, not knowing anything about how
I wouldn't touch this one. But while it's on the screen, I wanted to point that out because, and I'll go back to this one. This is what I did to Bitcoin in the spring, and it's not a point of like, oh, look what I did, as much as just an example of that. But like, this is the way you catch sick bottoms, and you can see it here, right? I mean, that day I was watching Bitcoin. It was March, 13th, 12th. And, I want to long it. I'm like, fuck, man, it's so cheap. This is like a super nuke. It's going to bounce. It's going to rally. Like, I'm still bullish on it. But how the hell do you measure your risk when you're just going straight down? But it's the next day, the test. And you can see here, I mean, this thing almost to a T. And it's a pretty simple tool, right? You just take the low, watch that impulse bounce, then start getting cheeky down in here. And it just lets you kind of measure a bottom instead of just buying like this. Because I think a lot of people probably got caught trying to long here, and then there was that next nuke, and like, how do you get into something like that? You just can't. So to put that in context, because that's what we're going to see in altcoins. I think you're right. I think we are going to see probably some degree of more capitulation somewhere along the way. I mean, is there anything that Bitcoin could do right now that wouldn't put a little more squeeze on the alts? I mean, if it breaks higher, it's going to probably be a little more pain versus Bitcoin. If it rolls over,
jump right now, and Ethereum's not following, which is interesting. Ethereum's bouncing, and maybe it will follow, but we're back at 13,700.
Yeah, let me go take a look. Actually, so yeah, I mean, this is the resistance we're at. I don't think it has to hold. I've got a ton of location objectives up here. I would not be shocked at all if they triggered. The altcoin trader in me wants to see this thing chop here for a bit, or even pull back a little and sort of cool the jets on Bitcoin. That's what I want. But
I mean, looking at it, you've got 3 pushes.
You got the 3 drive, yeah.
In crypto, 3 drives, 3 pushes. Where there's technically 3 drives or not, is typically a good spot for things to consolidate, things to pull back. And then also, you've got that upper trend line that we're actually getting really close to touching as well. And it doesn't look like you do mini diagonals or things like that. But if you do draw that upper trend line, we're getting there. And then there's confluence, of course, with the horizontal levels, the fibs. I mean, there's a lot of signs pointing to this being what could be a local top.
I want to get a cleaner chart, but yeah, I see that trend line. In fact, we just tagged it to a T, looks like. Let me get that on a weekly here. Can get rid of that crappy little chart. Oh, this is it's a little gross. It should work, but it's ooh. Yeah, no, this is the Bitcoin perps chart, so not very sexy. But that's a trend line I have had on. Ooh, there we go. Old range. Get rid of that. Yep. And trendline resistance has actually been really good this year.
Check out just XBT USD then, if this isn't working out. I know
BitMEX
liquid as it used to be, but there's a lot of history there where BitMEX was the king.
Yeah,
that looks like it fits pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a wick one. I tend to go candle body highs if I can, in which case we're actually there right now.
Yeah,
and that's more like your line chart kind of thing. So. Yeah, no, I think there's all kinds of reasons. I mean, certainly not an area where I'm rushing to take too longs, even if it does break up. I think I think if I had to guess, I'd say any move up to the upside will be very fast and violent and FOMO-y and probably look so beautiful, and it'll just be a big shooting star weekly. And
I mean, there's two scenarios if we break the trend line to the upside. And, of course, you've got the massive swing failure point, and a lot of people are going to get hurt on that. Or, like you said, it's just straight Chad to 19K. We're going to have to consolidate there, in my opinion, before we make additional upside.
It's pretty exciting, though. I mean, after the years, what is it, 2.5 years now of bear, it is kind of exciting to. It feels like a gimme at this point that we're just going to go. I mean, not right here, right now, but.
Look at the hat now. That's ultra distracting. It's a
Oh,
lot.
you're actually moving under your hat now.
Moving under the hat.
Jesus.
It looks like you might be getting one too. Your
Johnny,
hat
what are you doing to us over
assumed
here, bro? Yeah, producer's having a great time. So let's get a quick alt scan. Now, I love your takes when you get your lists up on your stream on Sunday nights and you go through the lists and it's like, hey, let's see what we can find. And short of like jumping in myself and being like, yo, look this one up, I really want you to look at UFT. I want your take on it. You got a really good sort of
Yeah, let's
FA gauge.
I just want to say anything that I'm potentially entering right now, anything that I'm buying right now, is going to be based on relative valuation. And what I mean by that is I'm going to look at the market cap, and then I'm going to determine, what kind of value am I getting here. And for example, we can look at a product like Insure, NSURE, or Safe2 cover. And we've got two insurance products that are, sub $10 million cap when Nexus Mutual is at $160 million cap. So just based on that alone, I feel like I'm buying value there. And that's a strategy that's worked out well for me in the past. Just when trying to determine, what, from a relative perspective, what might be undervalued, what might be overvalued. And maybe it is that, Safe is undervalued and Nexus Mutual is overvalued. But I do expect those things to converge at some point. So I feel pretty safe entering, something like that. Also, when I'm looking at something like NFY and, you're buying like a $1 million cap, things that are that low cap aren't necessarily influenced by the larger market moves of Bitcoin or Ethereum. So you could find some safety in buying things that are what are essentially micro caps, because those are controlled by whales. They're not controlled by any kind of market narrative. And the same kind of whales that are entering something that's a liquid and $1 million cap aren't the kind of whales that are going to say, fuck, well, Bitcoin's moving, I've got to dump this bag now. It's just a different game, whereas if I was entering something that was $50 million, you're talking about a different caliber of money that's involved. And, of course, these guys are going to hedge and they're going to, decide to sell and things like that. You said UFT?
Yeah, Unilend. And while you're talking, I was just charting the shit out of Monero, which is probably the one altcoin left that I think actually might be decent short. The short came in last week, but any bounces up here, I'm not trusting them. As far as altcoins go, this is probably the last standing soldier. As far as like trying to get in on that shorting of the alts, I wouldn't short any of the shit that's down, and BNB as well.
What does the weekly look like on XMR?
I'd have to find a better chart, probably Bitfinex. Let's take a look at Finex. Yeah, see, looks good. The weekly doesn't look bad, so it's not as much saying like this chart looks shitty on high time frames, because I think you nailed it. I mean, way to shit all over my nice short.
That looks like disbelief, though.
Yeah. Oh, as in like, yeah, it might roll back down.
No, it just that it might roll back down. But, when I say disbelief, I mean disbelief in the sense that, that's where we're at in the market cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did clear that high. I mean, if I'm looking at that structure, we have on a weekly scale higher highs and higher lows. So, I'm not going to be the guy that's just going to assume that trend is going to reverse, although there are indications, seeing the Willy topped out like that always makes me uncomfortable. If it's embedded, it's just a situation, I think, where, maybe this does pull back to $75 or something like that. Just based on what I'm seeing there, and then we can continue to the upside.
It's not a massive short. I mean, it's certainly not like this big overextended parabolic move, but as far as, speaking to the FOMO, the people that are like, well, man, I'm not in any shorts, I want to make some money. There's a lot of coins in here I wouldn't short, and Monero is just one of them that is
from a pure
putting in sort of like a toppy structure.
Support, resistance, indicators, anything aside from a pure PA perspective on the weekly chart, that doesn't look too great to me. It looks like it's rolling over.
Yeah, no, it's definitely closer to a bottom on the higher time frames. As far as like that does look like a big old bottom, but on the daily 4 hour, I think there's a little short in here if someone's desperate for it. I'm not rushing into anything. I think
rush short that just based on like the levels, and we did clear that
Yeah.
high, but at the same time, we cleared that high, but we still slammed into resistance there. And I think it's only natural that we'd get rejected the first time that we tried it on a high time frame.
Yeah, I mean this was me shorting, right? Like this was Neo back in like mid-September. I mean there was shorts firing like crazy, and that's sick. And they're okay, they're good. And I actually closed this thing way too early and whatever. But there was a time to really get aggressive shorting. I think we're past that, and we're in this kind of really, and that's why I was saying like kind of a bored state where it's like a little bit of
a nasty short.
Late to short, dude. It was actually, I'm not gonna lie, it's probably the sickest trade. Like I was entering here, like I had it right down to like the 15-minute. I basically found this. I gotta talk about it now, but real quick, because if nothing else, just to talk about how to spot these. It was basically like a 15-minute chart that turned into like a big swing short. So I had it sized. I mean, this was the Bitcoin 15-minute on Neo Bitcoin. I mean, it was just looking so like rising wedge. It was rolling over momentum indicators, falling volume, like everything screamed short. And then you go over to this like Neo USD chart, and it was at this like all these like high time frame price objectives that we had been watching, like just getting front run up here at like 1618. Anyways, so I ended up snagging like just absolute size. I think it was like a half cent off the highs. I was like, fuck it, full risk. Because you risk 0.5% up against those highs. I mean, you could take huge size, right? So it was a pretty sick trade. As it turns out, it was actually oversized in the sense that like this drop, and I was up like a stupid amount. So when it came back up, I was like, ooh, and then I re-added to it. And then when it came down here, I closed a lot of it, and then oops. So, I mean, that's the kind of shit where I say, okay, I've been doing this thing for 3 years and it's going pretty well. But in 10 years, I'm just going to be that much better. It's those kinds of little mistakes, like closing higher time frames trades early, that will be out of my wheelhouse as far as like learning from that. So, but what do you say we jump into Unilend? I want to hear your take on it. You're the guest today. Let's dive into Unilend. I was in the pre-sale. I'm bullish on it. I think we got it at 12 cents. But through all of this shit, it's actually looking really good. And there's volume coming in on it. And that's, so I'll let you maybe do it your way. Like you pull up the chart. How would you approach a totally new project that you were just going to dive into? Hello? Oh, might have lost Messi. Yeah, I think he lagged out. Yeah, sounds good. So talking to myself here about Unilend, I really like this one. I think Messi's gonna like it. And if he doesn't, I'd be interested to know why. It's a good, it's a pretty decent little. So disgusted with UFT, he just bounced. Yeah, I know, Andrew Little. He exit scammed us. So yeah, I mean, this one, there's some pretty sick volume coming in during the bear, during everything else DeFi dumping. So who knows what is causing this buying? But Unilend, it's one that I'm pretty bullish on. It's like sub 5 mil. But John, you want to just ping them maybe on Discord? Something. My Discord's closed. And let's see. So what I was doing, for those of you who are sticking around here first, we're just going to wait till he signs back in. It happens to the best of us. That's a Wirecast rendezvous issue, most likely. So what I've been doing lately.
There you go.
Is that him? There he is. Ooh.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. We got you back. All right, perfect.
Okay. Well, it said at the bottom of my screen, it said that what at rendezvous, whatever, was sharing my screen, and I was like, what the fuck? Like I didn't share my screen. So I clicked stop sharing, and it looks like that dropped me. But yeah,
welcome
I'm
to the world, man.
Sure,
yeah, rendezvous is an adventure itself. It's a weird little third party online.
I'm not quite sure what happened there, but that's okay.
It's all good. Just as you left, I actually don't know what part of the Neo that you left at, but let's take a look. Like, just say somebody on your stream requests UFT. How do you start? Where do you go, let's walk through your process, because that's actually something I'd like to learn from too.
I've got my screen shared right now. If we can get that up, and let's see. Okay, fantastic. The first thing I'm going to do, of course, is go to CoinGecko. They've got all the shit coins, and I want to go ahead and just check out, what market cap I'm buying into. What's the circulating supply relative to the fully diluted supply, and if there is a lot of supply that's not in circulation, I'm going to want to understand, how fast that's coming online. The first thing I'm seeing here is, I'm seeing 90% of the supply reserved for development funds, which is definitely interesting. It's not something that's necessarily a red flag, but it's something that I'd want to go to their Telegram channel and ask about. That's certainly a lot of the supply that's been set aside for that. Let's go check out the website. When I look at a web page, all of these crypto projects are 100% narrative driven. So if I'm not seeing a narrative that can be pumped, if I'm not seeing something that gets me excited, and I get major FOMO, so I know if I don't get excited about something, then nobody else is going to be excited about it too. So when I look at this, within the first 30 seconds, I need to get that feeling of like, this is going to fucking pump. And a team can't, explicitly say necessarily, hey, buy this and you'll get rich. But they have to.
If they do, you should probably run.
If they do, that's a red flag. You need to get the fuck out of there. And, maybe you are buying the next BitConnect. I mean, look at Hex. Shit just keeps going up. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But when I'm looking at this, their marketing team, whoever's in charge of selling this project, selling this narrative, has to be able to convey the fact that buying this is going to make me hilariously rich, and they have to be able to do it quickly. Because if I'm not getting that feeling just off looking at it, why is anybody else going to come in and buy my bag? Why is anybody else going to get FOMO? So looking at this, unlocking the true potential of decentralized finance, Unilend is a permissionless decentralized protocol that combines spot trading services and money markets with lending and services through smart contracts. Okay, so Unilend, blah, blah, blah. Permissionless listing, lending and borrowing, which is a hot narrative right now, trading, liquidity, governance. The team is important, not as important as a lot of people would have you believe. It is good to see that these guys are real people. They've got LinkedIn's. This guy has, got previous experience at Matic Network, which is a big project that's respected. So, I'd highly doubt that this was anything nefarious or some kind of rug. Just seeing the credentials of some of these people and seeing that they've, put their real docs out there for you to check out. I've heard of Frontier Wallet. I'm not quite sure, what it is. So interest rates, collateralization. If you had to say, what is this most similar to? Because, I see lending, and lending something that's been done a lot, Compound, Aave, why is Unilend,
I'm looking
potentially a better protocol? Why am I buying value here?
Yeah, there's a pie graph. I thought it was on their website, so I was waiting for you to see it. But it's basically, as far as I can suss out from it was over a month and a half ago that we did all our due diligence. But basically that it's going to it's going to allow access to all the other tokens that are thus far not involved in the lending and borrowing. So basically any token, any coin can be a part of DeFi.
So I'm seeing the advantage here, that they're basically saying that users can list anything to be used for collateral or for borrowing.
Yes.
Which certainly sounds interesting. I am curious about the risks that introduces. Are there certain criteria? Because for example, what if I made my own shitcoin, and I that nobody knew about, and I had all the supply. And I decide that I'm going to provide liquidity that gives my shitcoin a $200 million market cap. And then I propose and I put that up as collateral. I'd want to know that there was something in place to protect me from potential frauds like that. Because, mean, if I was able to put, $100 million of collateral up, just because they're using Uniswap as an oracle, and I put up my own shitcoin for trading on Uniswap, and I propose it as collateral. I mean, I'm curious, does the governance of the token have to vote on it as collateral? How are they going to handle liquidations, et cetera, et cetera? It certainly is an interesting
Yeah,
concept.
you know what? I just pinged you a Medium article on your Telegram. Pull that up. That's the pie chart that kind of got me bullish on it. But you raise a really good question, and I think the dynamic of exactly how they just are going to be the first to allow all that access is a really good question, and probably one that on Watchback I'm going to pull and take to the team.
And they are right. I mean, there's a lot of untapped market, and there could be several projects that could potentially be good collateral. But there, like I said, that introduces a lot of issues. So if they're able to somehow solve those issues, then I think this would be quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I mean, as far as current, market cap and then scale, like potential, the scale of it. Obviously, it launched in the midst of a DeFi winter, but as you can see,
Typically projects like that do pretty well, though. Because they don't have that nasty spike on the chart that's been rejected. Now they're not down 90%. I mean, there's a lot of psychology that plays into to things like this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this summer we were like, oh man, DeFi is running crazy. We're so deep in the Unilend, like this is going to be sick. And then it launched in like the worst possible time. So it actually came down a bit closer to our entry, but it consolidated for like a week, and now it's got quite a bid, a lot of volume coming in. It's kind of pulled back now off its highs around 40 cents. It's sitting around whatever it is, 30 cents.
So it is saying that any ERC20 token would be able to list without a centralized entity or DAO controlling the process. So like I said before, I am curious about how they would control that attack vector that I just described, and maybe there is some kind of liquidity requirement or things like that, or maybe I could do that, but based on maybe the liquidity controls the collateralization ratios, or I mean, surely these guys have thought of that, because I thought of it in 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I want to just be ignorant and be like, oh yeah, no, they got that covered. But it's an important question, and I think it's something that should be brought up. And I'm sure our communications with the team thus far have been very positive. They're pretty sharp guys, and they've been on top of the entire launch process and the ongoing communication. And I think one of the things Nick has been pretty bullish on with them has been their strategy for growth thus far has been basically like Chainlink, partnering with everyone. If you want to be on Unilend, obviously your token on it, then you partner with them. And so their network effect thus far has been quite aggressive out of the gate. So.
Oh, so the whole like permissionless listing, and has that gone live yet?
I don't think so. I mean, I want it to, because I want to, I like the idea of whatever shitcoin I'm holding on to, and I am holding a couple, that I could stake those and basically be lending them or whatever, getting some kind of yield while I just sit here waiting for the next bull.
This is an interesting concept. Just governance in general. And we were discussing this on stream last night. There's a fine line between, when governance is a good thing and when governance is a bad thing. And, of course, governance is all anybody, wants to talk about right now. But the reality of the situation is, especially at early phases, I would almost rather a project that I'm in have a benevolent dictator than some form of decentralized governance. Somebody that has a vision, that's going to execute on that vision, that's going to get the project to a point where governance makes sense. Because you when you're thinking about incentives, in a project that I'm in, Bounce.finance, is currently having this issue, and countless other projects too. When they've let governance run too early, I think, because you get token holders. And those token holders are going to, the people that are actually voting, think about one thing and one thing only. And that's let's make number go up.
Yeah.
Right. And the issue with that is they end up making decisions that, in their brainlet minds, it seems like, this is going to make the number go up. For example, hey, let's decrease the, and this is happening to Haka Finance, which is another thing that I'm invested in. you've got these government people participating in governance that are saying, hey, these liquidity providers are getting too much rewards. We gotta reduce that inflation. We gotta take away their rewards. Well, if the yield dries up, the liquidity goes somewhere else, and the downside could be much more aggressive.
Yeah.
In that instance, and that's scary to me. So if these guys haven't fully transitioned to that DAO model, permissionless, I'd almost say that's more of a pro than a con, especially at a $3.7 million market cap.
Right. Yeah, I don't think they have. I don't think the platform is fully live yet. As far as I've been told, it was like end of month, but that was like mid-October, so not end of month, but in a month. And they're obviously still doing a lot of control of that, and but that makes sense. I mean, early on, especially when you have a fairly small pool of holders, the governance then becomes fairly centralized even to that small group, and they're all thinking like, oh, let's burn everything and token burn this, and that's great. But no, I agree. I'd like the people who are smart, who are in charge, who created the project, to really build it and grow it. And then at some point, when you have a really diversified group of holders with a broader vision, and perhaps even a fairly heavy load in some of the founders to make sure that their baby stays on track, then it makes sense to open.
I mean, a fantastic example of a benevolent dictator was Cream. The guy who is, I don't know if you want to call him the CEO or whatever, but Jeff, who started Cream, who's has other projects. Another project of his is Mithril, which hasn't really performed because it's not DeFi. He was acting as benevolent dictator, before governance went live, and under his guidance, Cream went fucking crazy. I
remember that.
Even when things started to turn, and you saw, really the top happening in real time for other DeFi markets, Cream was relentless in its pursuit of additional upside. And I think a lot of that is because, Jeff wasn't doing anything that was just fucking stupid. You saw several situations where, like I said, people were deciding, hey, we're giving these liquidity providers too much. Well, that led to the death of DeFi. The yield dried up. If there's no yield in DeFi, then there's no DeFi, because DeFi at this early bootstrapping phase is heavily incentivized. And that's what brings in the users. That's what makes it liquid. That's what creates transactional volume. So I do like this chart, just in the sense that, and I understand, we do have that lower high there, but it definitely looks like it could be consolidating.
Yeah, I didn't love that though. We kind of had a failed to make a new high. The volume kind of fell off, so somebody loaded up. There was some, what is inside news driven rally. I mean, that was fairly sustained. I was watching it live for basically a week, but I do expect a decent shot at a pullback into what I always call the RLZ, that sort of fib that's probably like 22 cents. And I actually sold a little in my initial. So just for transparency, the pre-salers, they get 25% at TGE. A lot of them exited. And as you can see there, like in the first couple of weeks, I was all like, because if you have 75% and then the other 75% is 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, right? So people that have that, they're going to take that 2x, a lot of them out of the gates. They clearly did. And then that just flatlined and we got that rally. So, I think every 3 months you'll have to keep an eye out for that next release. For now, I sold half of my first 25% up in this rally, and I'd like to get it back at sort of that level you just drew up, actually, 22, 24 cents. What was your GAN fan? Now that I'm looking at it, I'm seeing sort of I guess that off that first impulse, maybe you have a GAN going.
Let's see here.
Ooh, yeah, okay. I was gonna say off the first, like the proper big fat candle, but I like yours better there.
I typically, I try to draw it back as far back as I can, and I'm actually going to switch to the hourly on this, just because we don't have a lot of history here, and I want to make sure it's anchored appropriately. So yeah, that would be. Is this a higher? Yeah, you could potentially even anchor it there. This one is a little iffy, but yeah, that's I think that's a decent fit there.
It looks good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, just TA wise, it's difficult for, I mean, for really anything right now. Because I mean, you've got things like Andre's new project, Keeper, that went absolutely ballistic. That it couldn't go for that third push. When is the next token emission?
For Unilend, that would be. I'll have to get the exact date. Probably about 2 months. It's been
Okay,
live.
so
I
we
mean,
don't have to worry about more supply hitting the market or whatever.
no, you could take that launch date basically, and then just add 2 months or
Like I
3 months.
said, I mean, I think from a fundamental perspective, this looks good. The only thing that I'm concerned about, and maybe this isn't a concern at all, is just the fact that 90% of the supply is not in circulation. And it's not just that it's not in circulation, but it's that it says it's a dev fund. Um,
Hmm.
which, and it says that on CoinGecko right here, and teams have to submit and clarify these things. So, I'm just curious, when we're talking development funds, are these guys, you can't fund development. You can't pay your mortgage in Unilend. These guys have to sell to fund development, to do this, to do that. I wonder if this is vested. Is there some kind of error right here? I'd really want to see clarification on that. It is good to see this nice positive sentiment on it. And just in terms of, being able to have anything used as collateral or be able to borrow anything really, that's certainly interesting. But I mean, there's no way this is all a dev fund because
Yeah, I'm looking at that thinking that's crazy.
that just doesn't make sense because, surely just like Compound or Aave or anything like that, surely they would, try to incentivize lenders and borrowers in some way, to increase that TVL on their platform. But
Yeah, well, I've got a couple
I'm
of notes
interested.
here from your take on it. I'm gonna take that to the team and ask about it because those are good clarifying points. I mean, if you pull those up in what 10 minutes, those are going to be good clarification points for the team to put out to the community.
I think if those things can get ironed out and we can determine for a fact that, hey, like maybe these 90 million tokens or whatever, maybe they're on a 2-year vesting schedule or something like that. And we're not worried about massive like supply shock or anything like that in the near future. And then maybe they do have some kind of filtration method based on liquidity or volatility, for things as collateral because like let's say I do offer up something as collateral, and there's $100,000, $200,000 of liquidity. One guy could come in and liquidate my position, right? One whale could come in and nuke it and wick it down to where I'm under collateralized, and now my collateral has been seized to cover that. So there's another product that's actually working on kind of long tail lending as well. And I haven't looked at it in a long time. That's Unit Protocol. And I believe they've just released their product. But I had some of the same concerns with them. And I think it's lowish market cap too. But once again, kind of same situation. Definitely something that's interesting. I'll say that. And one of the things when I'm investing in things, I want to look for something novel. I don't want to buy a clone. I don't want to buy something that's already been done. If I buy something that's already been done, there's a very, very large chance that whatever I'm buying is never going to perform as well as the original. We've seen this with Core specifically.
Ugh.
Whenever something comes out that's hot, the original performs, the original goes to the moon, everybody gets rich. And for all the people that miss the boat, people start making clone coins. And people buy these clones, hoping that this is going to perform even half as well as the original. And I think that buying clones is just asking to get wrecked.
It is. And in a strong enough market though, you can get, echo pumps, I like to call them,
sure.
but not on new clone projects. Like I like an echo pump when like BNB pumps and then KCS pumps, and it's like they're both fairly fundamentally strong, but they're just, you can catch that trend. But then you get like YFI, YFL, YFJ, YFI.
Oh, dude, the Y clones that was just stupid. But like you said, in a bull market, look at YFV. YFV went fucking bananas.
I traded YFV. Yeah, I caught it like $50 to 120 and got out and made a nice buck. But like, you just get out though. You don't, it just hurts my brain when, and not because, it just hurts me because like I know people are just going to get wrecked, and I see them even now. So we are not in a bull market. Newsflash, guys, in Alttown and DeFi right this minute, we're not in a rip roaring bull. So it's not time to go rush into the sexy next clone. I find that especially when they pop up in the middle of the bull market, you're like, yo, so some guy literally sat there, saw this one thing go sick, crazy, and then went back home and like fired up a little copy paste contract and said, let's launch it.
Yeah, you can deploy it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's not the kind of team and that I want to invest in. Like I want somebody.
No, I mean, you're not investing in anybody that's capable of creating anything new, novel, hype worthy. And also, when that little time has been spent on actually manufacturing something, the risk of scam or rug goes up exponentially.
Yeah, let's flip back to studio. No, I agree, and I think I mean, this year obviously I've been not getting into any of that nitty gritty copy paste stuff, but there's been a few. I mean, I've messed around with a couple rebase tokens. I don't find them very sexy, but for what it's worth, I'm some good buddies of mine are into them, and I'll give them a shot. But I'm typically like first to take my initial back, and even if that means riding like a fairly small half size position, I've just it's kind of the market state. And that's actually to that effect. I think that's sort of the message. If you flip back to your camera there and see your beautiful face here on the studio, the tweet I put out this morning was kind of the vibe I have right now with the markets. And this, you get the bull run, everyone's piling in, everything's sexy, it's so exciting, making money, and then that goes away. And so what you've got is a lot of people, they're now hooked on that dopamine. Are you still there? Did we lose him again? Nope, we got him. Oh, that's weird. Okay, we'll have to look into that. We haven't had that yet with anyone else, but it could be a permissions thing or something. So yeah, basically, I just visualize like this ice cream truck driving by with gains, and those people are just hooked on this shit, and they're chasing it down the street. Right now, we're just running out of new. There's no new blood, new money coming in. So
the ice cream is melted.
Yeah, the ice cream is melted. Unfortunately, the train for this cycle, for this alt season, we did have a nice rip roaring alt season, and it's really hard. I think one of the hardest things is living between those, right? So you make your 1,000%, your 200%, whatever you got out with is good for you. If you made money, that's great. But are you going to be around, and how much of your capital is going to be around at the next time when it's easy? Because there are times in the market when shit's easy, right? I mean, this summer was pretty crazy. It was like, holy shit, look at that. That's going up. I'll just buy this. It's going to go up. I'll buy that. It's going to go up. This moment right now, this market cycle we're in, it's hard. This is the harder trading. And as unsexy as it is right now, I actually
it's time to take setups. We're back to the days of let's chase this 20% here, or let's chase this 30% here. I mean, you're not going to get X's consistently, reliably
right now
in the current market climate.
Yeah, but if you are focused and paying attention and planting seeds when the trend starts to show signs of reversing, and that took time. I mean, I remember last spring I was buying things in April and May. It wasn't very exciting. Twitter was kind of quiet. And then you look back at those entries in July, August.
They were absurd.
And they were sick. And so the point being, the best time to get in is actually when it's pretty quiet and boring. I just don't think we're quite there yet. And so what I'll be focusing on the stream and what we talked about today is a lot of preserving capital, what you can do with your time to stay productive, to prepare yourself for that time.
Play video games.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I want to get back on Twitch with you shortly because Call of Duty Cold War is coming out. I don't know how good it is. I've heard mixed reviews.
Oh, I'm going to be getting it. It was my mother's birthday last night, so I got to see my little brother, and nice. He said that he played the beta for Cold War, and it was sick.
Okay, that's good. I heard somebody say it wasn't that good. I don't usually take their review for it. I'll just play it myself. I missed the beta. I have the pre-sale order, but I was away that weekend. So yeah, so let's jump on Twitch in the coming weeks, whenever that comes out. I don't even know. Is it like next week or something? And I wanted to do some live trading and playing, but right now there's not a whole lot of trading to be done. I think Bitcoin, some of the majors I've been looking at, but nothing's really.
I mean, we're gonna get clarity, tomorrow. So yeah. I think there's not too much more waiting. You've got to remember that in 2017, and of course the dynamics were different, this and that. But we pretty much had a 1-year bear market or 1-year bull market for altcoins. And one could even argue that that bull market for altcoins, started in 2016 and really heated up in 2017. That's when we saw some of those face melting rallies. I mean, I had a lot of friends that made a lot of money in 2016, but it wasn't everybody. There's a lot of parallels between what happened in 2016 to what happened with this DeFi season. Because, with this Uniswap stuff, I mean, there's polls that, go out right now. And I mean, still I think, 30-40% of people on crypto Twitter, at least, in our little bubble, actually participated in all that Uniswap madness. And even less of those people that participated actually made really good money. Yeah. This alt season lasted how long? What, 1.5 months, 2 months?
Yeah, 1 to 2.
So I can't imagine this bear market being another 2-year, 2.5-year bear winter for some of these DeFi projects. It's
no, I mean, I'm stuck,
valuable to me.
Yeah, I'm stuck between was this the test pump, and then we pull back and it's fairly quick and it's maybe a couple weeks and then we just really go again, and that's the bull case, or is this going to be a couple a multi-month wash and then it's sort of that Q2 2021. If I had, my best guess, my conservative guess is Q2. I think May, June we're probably going to be ripping. If not before then, we get that crypto winter, things are boring. I mean, that's my conservative, okay, RT, that's really boring and shitty. That's the worst case, I think, that it's one level at a time. So who really cares what I think way out there? But that's what I'm projecting for.
I mean, things in
that sense, I'm just sitting on my hands right now. As far as
I guess, my counter argument, things are moving right now. I don't think that if there was any kind of possibility for any kind of reversal, and we were in this kind of dire situation, and we're going to have to wait, 6 more months for our next crazy alt run or whatever. We're not going to have things like Keeper going, 4,000% in 2 days. And I understand, that's an Andre project. So, there's that Andre premium baked in. He's got that notoriety. But I still think that's testament to the fact that people have money left to buy. A lot of people are washed out. A lot of people are wrecked. A lot of people are stuck in things that are maybe 1 cycle coins that are illiquid. But is this a test pump, or was that a test pump for DeFi? I'm going to say yes for a lot of projects, and no for a lot of projects. We've discussed the concept of a 1 cycle project several times in the streams that I've done. And
I've caught that.
Fortunately, a lot of people are going to end up in bags that they're not coming back. So time will tell. Yeah,
it was a cool idea while things were hot and everyone's buying everything, and then you realize, holy shit, there was no legs there, and it's just not.
Well, I invested in a cute little game, and the game played out, and some people got rich, and you weren't one of them. So maybe it's time to go ahead and realize that before the rest of the bag holders do.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really light on my feet this summer, and it's served me well. I think it's nice to get in and get out, and I try to convey that. But people like community. People like the idea of having their bag and their thing that's going to go. I think, hell, man, if I get 2 ETH in and it turns into 5 ETH and I take my 2 ETH back, I'm a community member now. I'll take that 3 ETH to the moon or to the grave. But as soon as I de-risked and actually switching to that from maybe what I did through 2017, 2018, has saved and maintained a lot of my base. And sure, you miss some omega pumps with some of that initial capital, but God, it feels good sleeping knowing that you can't lose money. And it's a really hard place to get yourself in. So if you're fortunate enough to be in a market that gives you an X out of the gates, don't be afraid to pay yourself. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, take a little off. I say take a little off and go gamble with that. Go to TixWix and on Hxro and.
Yeah, I've got a few up here actually. Maybe no, I won't pull that up on stream today. But yeah, I've got to touch 13 by the end of the week. We'll see if we get some volatility.
I'd be interested to in seeing your play there. Unfortunately, I can't because I'm a U.S. citizen. But I've got some Euro friends that are. They got into it on day one and are performing really well.
Yeah, I've had some fun with it. Okay, we'll pull it up. One last thing. I know it's the top of the hour, guys. We are going to wrap here in a sec. If you haven't already, hit the sub, hit the like. We've got a lot of stuff going on this channel. We've actually got a new podcast coming out very shortly as well. You're not going to want to miss that. So little plug there. All Messi's videos get uploaded here after the fact. And, we got Nick and I Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. So if you haven't already,
so you're a Wix man.
I'm a Wix. This week I'm a Wix. I was messing with ticks last week, but on the volatile week, I don't know where it's going to close. But I want to see. So yeah, I've got some wicks and some upside and downside objectives for the month upside, for the week up and down, and we're just going to see. And I actually want to add. So if we squeeze up here, into like maybe tonight and today, I'm going to probably take a little more on my touch 13. I mean, 13 is not far. It's like right here. Like that's like a sweep of these lows. I could see that. And if you get into the more like the TA stuff, I mean, there is bearish divergence on volume, MACD, and RSI on this move up. So this is really like a bearish retest to me. I don't know, and I don't think it's that bearish.
It's a bearish retest to me too. I mean, we're
Yeah.
at resistance right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just ranging, and even if we are, going to break into a range here, like that's 13 right in here. So, yeah, I really like my wicks to the downside for this week, and that's what's going to be like a couple 100% on my $360. So I'm into that.
One of the most interesting strategies that I've spoken about with Dan, because it's great pursuing that 3.39, right? I mean, hitting a 3.39, just from a wick to 14,500 that's a rush.
Yeah.
But taking the no side and pursuing those odds that are, not 3.39, but 1.2, 1.
The yields, 1.3 right now.
It essentially is like yield farming, because if you can successfully do that and you can compound that for 5, 10, 15 days, you can 5x your account. And if the volatility is low enough, like look, for what is that, November 10th? November 6th. Okay. Yeah. So you got November 6th, I can come in and I can say that, no, I don't think that Bitcoin's going to, wick to 14,500. And if that doesn't happen, then I make 30% on that position. I mean, you do that a couple of times and you're sitting at mega multipliers, especially if you have some kind of martingale strategy.
Yeah, no, that's Dan came on actually, what was it, Friday or Wednesday? He was on the stream with me and Nick, and I mean, he created this kind of concept, because I'm not an options guy, but he was kind of explaining his thoughts on it. But yeah, if you live inside the zone, I mean, it's a pretty big playscape as far as yielding. I'm not sold on, I'm not too comfy with those returns to call sort of chill your, like for it to just range here really tight. I'm actually more into this like volatility this week. But like I told him, I often talk about this on stream. Let's see if I can pull it up.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, like I don't think it's time for the no strategy right now.
Yeah.
If vol totally dies after these elections, though, that's, you could make insane multipliers just by being right that that volatility hasn't returned.
Hell yeah. I mean, and there's signals, and we've talked about this multiple times on stream. So, you get these rip-roaring bulls, and then there's a big smackdown. That often shocks the market into a range. And look at here. I mean, you almost had 2 months of no's that would have been hitting. Same thing here. You get a nice big breakout.
2 months of no's? I mean, hell, like
because even
let me do the math really quick, because I know we're not trying to go too much longer. Just a second here. Let's see.
And while you're doing the math, I mean, it happened again. This big break up, and then it just smacked down in this candle, and I was like, oh, that's probably going to end our trend for a bit. And sure enough, we're just ranging. You would have got blown out on half of your nose here about August, September, so about a month later.
Because right now it's volatile, so the odds of no are of course really good, right? But let's say we're in a period where there's not volatility, and let's just say that the returns have dropped to like maybe 1.5% per day. So 1.5% per day, if you chose that no side, and let's say that you continue to choose that no side for 2 months or something like that.
Which is, if we wash out, I mean, anytime you get an end of a cycle and there's a bottoming,
you can 2x your account doing that.
Yeah.
And that's on, super, super low. I mean, as it stands, and of course, I don't think this strategy is something that's viable, but I mean, if you're going to be making, like 3% per day, and I actually think the math on the last one was wrong. I'm a little tired myself. So yeah, I mean, if you're making like 3% per day, after a month of compounding, you're sitting at like 2.4x, which ain't bad. For trading in a no volatility environment without the risk of any kind of liquidation or any funny business.
Yeah, I mean, you just risk what you put up, and so if you just can measure that, it's a lot easier to measure that than percentage on stop losses and liquidations and fees and all that crap, right? So I like the ease of it. You know, it's like, okay, I'm gonna just fire, like, put 10 more bucks in, 10 more bucks in every time it pumps, 10 more bucks in, and you know, if we wick down, then that's gonna pay out, and if we don't, I've got a fairly measured downside risk. The other thing too is, like, I'm long on Bitcoin, so this is sort of a hedge for me. If we do drop off to 13K, you know, my Bitcoin will lose some value, my wicks will smack. So there's more dynamics to it. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, I am, you know, god tier options trader, hedge extraordinaire. But I certainly am intrigued by this, and I've been basically every day.
I mean, there's longer term plays there as well, you know, and it, you know, we all know what Bitcoin does when Bitcoin does it, right?
Yeah. No, I smacked the Q1 ETH wicks, like, as far as like March 26, 2021. I like it. I like the upside, and you know, I'm not balls deep in it. I got a couple $100, but it pays like 50x.
Yeah.
And you know, I can roll that over to the next quarterly contract when that comes out. I think ETH is going to touch 1,000. So if I'm getting 59x returns on that, then you know, I'll lay that down, and if it doesn't hit by then, or the new quarterly comes out, I can hit that one for 1,000 and hit that one for 1,000, and it just has to hit hopefully by the end of next year, and then whatever I'm long on, you know, should smack. I mean, that's my theory. This is a new product, and I'm new to it, so.
And hell yeah, I mean, the best part about it is it doesn't necessarily what matters in the meantime. It doesn't matter how it happens, only that it does. So
yeah, you're just constrained by time. It's a new dimension. So I'm actually, and we're going to continue doing more educational stuff on the Hxro side of things. You guys, they're putting out a lot of good threads. So I'm learning at light speed and just kind of enjoying the ride and playing relatively small, so that I can learn without getting too stressed out and just having a good time here. So, dude, good to see you. Good to have you on the stream finally. We talked about this a couple times. So nice to have you over on this side of the fence. And if anyone who watches our stream usually does not know, you go live on Periscope on Sunday evenings. You've actually been going live a little more often lately too. I think I saw you last Thursday.
Yeah, we've been doing 3 to 4 times a week now. You know, and there's certainly, I've got like, you know, 5 or 6 videos that I need to upload, you know, that we'll get on YouTube for you guys that weren't able to catch the Periscopes there, and, you know, get it in a nice format for you to.
Yeah, it's nice to house it all in one place too, and we'll get you your own playlist over here. And,
thanks for having me. I mean, this was it was a good banter and a good dynamic, and you know, I'm sure we'll have to do something. We'll have to set up something, you know, on a more recurring basis, you know, just to get that crossover. I think people enjoyed the stream for sure.
Yeah, no, I did. I really like having your takes on more of the in-depth DeFi stuff, obviously. And you know, when the market heats up again, I'm definitely going to get your ass back in here to help us find as much juice as possible while the juice is ready to be squeezed. So,
to everyone that's watching, please buy my bags.
Yeah, you caught it here. We got Hack of Finance. What else are we gonna plug? No, we
already plugged a bunch of them.
Yeah, so
you guys know what I meant. So come on, get to work. You guys are being lazy. You know, I need you to come on my bags. Like, come on, get to
Unilend. I've got a few questions for the Unilend team, and you know, I'll hit you up in DMs if I get the answers to that. We can keep sussing that one out, because if it dips,
sure, maybe in the next stream, you know, we can go over the answers to those questions as well, or you can.
Yeah. Actually, I'll be bringing them up. Nick and I are both
I think that'd be interesting.
Kind of in talks with them, so we'll be sure to feature it. Actually, I guess Friday's a good day, guys. So Nick will be on Wednesday, and I'll be back here on Friday to join him in the studio. Until next time, everybody, always play from a position of strength. Take care.